Hi everyone, welcome back to Numinosophy Academy. I'm Lewis. So I must be a glutton for punishment because once again I'm jumping on to the FairMormon YouTube channel in order to react to their series, This is the Show. Acronym for which? TITS. I don't know if that's an attempt at Mormon humor or just an unfortunate error. Either way, it wouldn't surprise me. So in order to not prolong our suffering too much, I'm actually going to be reacting in quick succession to 3 of their videos today. Their video on the temple, on the Kinderhook plates, and on the Seer stones, all of which are, of course, reacting to the CES letters. So we'll begin shortly. If you could just do me a favor and like this video for the YouTube algorithm, that will help me out a lot. Okay, so let's get started with the first video, which is titled, Temples Are Great and the CES Letter is Weak.
One thing that seems to make people upset is the fact that temples exist, and the fact that Freemasons exist. Well, this uncomfortable realization brought me to honesty. I'm here to admit to you that Joseph Smith made it all up. He plagiarized the Book of Mormon by copying a map on the back of the Declaration of Independence.
Okay, well, FYI, it doesn't make me upset. In fact, I like that it's a thing. Mormons, temples, Freemasons. I think the world's much more interesting for having all that stuff in it.
CES letter opens the temple chapter with a quote deliberately cut in half to paint a sinister picture of the church. This is the quote. Because of their Masonic characters, the ceremonies of the temple are sacred and not for the public.
The rest of the quote says, but there's nothing disloyal in them as so often asserted, nor in their performance is there the slightest departure from the principles of decorum and propriety.
So, I don't know if it's because I'm not an online conspiracy theorist, but the word Masonic doesn't bring to mind for me something which is sinister. I don't know, maybe that's just me.
Jeremy Runnels and his subreddit minions literally took out the second half of the quote to manipulate you.
The letter essentially makes the argument that Joseph Smith copied Freemason ceremonies to create the LDS Temple endowment ceremony. It even quotes Elder Heber C. Kimball when he said, "We have the true Masonry. The Masonry of today is received from the apostasy which took place in the days of Solomon and David. They have now and then a thing that is correct, but we have the real thing."
So, yeah, I think this is just the idea that Joseph Smith was a Freemason, and when he created the various rituals that would take place within the temple, my understanding is that his involvement in Freemasonry influenced the creation of those ceremonies. I don't think that's really problematic in any way. That just seems to me to be what happened.
However, right after that, the CES letter asked the question, if Masonry had the original temple ceremony but became distorted over time, the LDS ceremony, why doesn't it close remember 957? Well, it does. What the CES letter doesn't do is support its claims. It's criticizing the church for the temple ceremony not being Masonic enough to match early Masonry without actually mentioning anything from early Masonry. Jeremy Runnels and his subreddit minions are literally just saying stuff.
So I think there's a bit of confusion about what the origins of Masonry are, because within Masonry itself, there's a mythological origin, which is based around Solomon's temple, around the building of the temple. But the actual origins is 18th century England. Basically, a lot of people meeting in pubs and deciding that it would be quite cool to start getting together and developing rituals in order to kind of create fraternities, create brotherhoods. So again, I don't see anything sinister in it. And the fact that it influenced Joseph Smith, I don't see anything sinister in that either. There's no capital T truth, in my mind, behind the rituals that one needs to preserve one way or the other, because they're just created rituals, either the rituals created by Joseph Smith or those rituals created by some English guys in some pubs.
Jeremy Runnels is adding in enough angry paragraphs and enough pictures and enough fancy words to make you think the church lied to you and Boyd K. Packer is the head of the Illuminati.
The CES letter says that Freemasonry has no links to Solomon's temple. It also says that it's a myth that Solomon passed down rituals into what would become Freemasonry. Here's the
Right.
thing. The church doesn't claim it was. Individual people can come up with their own ideas and theories, but the church doesn't have an official position on that. Besides, Elder Kimball claimed that the Freemason ceremony contained information during the apostasy of the days of Solomon and David. Essentially, the false things taught at that time is what the Freemason ceremony has. If anything, church leaders claimed that the Freemasons were wrong and tried to restore false principles. The church is claiming they restored the true principles. The real goal of this section is to ask, why are there similarities between the Freemason ceremony and the LDS temple ceremony? Well, the first thing to know is that many of these similarities actually predate Freemasonry.
Things like anointing with oil are present in the temple and Freemason ceremony.
So, are they seriously trying to deny that Freemasonry influenced the rituals that emerged in the temple? That's just what happened. I don't understand what they're doing here.
And other Christian traditions, and Judaism, and like every other religion ever. I mean, did everyone steal from the Masons, or is there just a common theme we're all drawing from?
No, come on, Quaker. That's just what the Illuminati paid you to say.
Oh, that's ridiculous. They don't pay me.
Really, the big question is, did Joseph Smith use the Masonic rituals for the LDS Temple endowment? Well, yes, and here's why that's actually really cool. Joseph Smith claimed to be a prophet, and his priesthood office was apostle. Whether you believe him or not, by claiming this, he gets to follow in the footsteps of those who were apostles in ancient times.
The reality is the Lord gave Joseph Smith the information and revelation that mankind needed to know. The method of doing this was appropriated from the pagan Freemason ceremony. We even do this outside of the Bible. Christmas was appropriated from the winter solstice.
And, I mean, Halloween was appropriated from Samhain, the ancient Celtic holiday.
And the CES letter was appropriated from... People have been doing this forever, but for some reason when Joseph Smith does it, the rules change.
So, yes.
Well, the rules only change if in the past there's been an attempt to deny or cover up the fact that he has been influenced by many different sources, including the rituals of Freemasonry. But no, if you're happy to acknowledge that, Joseph Smith's religion was in general influenced by many different sources, then no, we have no disagreement. Okay, well, I'll stop there. That's the first video. Now, on to video 2.
One of the weirdest stories in church history is the story of the Kinderhook plates, and obviously the CES letter cannot help but distort the story.
Oh, so we're just starting aggressive on this one? We're just...
Yeah.
Okay, all right, no, let's do it.
Okay, so what are the Kinderhook plates? 6 bell-shaped brass plates were brought to Joseph Smith to translate.
People were excited, and even apostles Parley P. Pratt and John Taylor talked about how Joseph probably would translate them. The only problem is, he didn't. Here to comment more?
Well, he didn't in as far as there wasn't a document released which were the translated words of the Kinderhook plate. But he did comment upon what he believed they said, and he did give some prophetic thing about they are the writings of some descendant of Ham or something like that. I don't remember exactly. So, no, he didn't completely fall into the Heffalump trap, but nor did he entirely avoid it either. He believed that they were the real deal, and he did give some initial commentary.
Or are the Kinderhook plates?
Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Thor. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm so glad to be here.
Glad to have you, Kinderhook.
Well, I'm a fraud. I was made by a couple of guys who wanted to prove Joseph Smith was a liar. So they crafted me up, and I assume expected Joseph to translate me through some divine means, like using the Seer stone or some general inspiration.
Did that not happen?
No, he reached for his Hebrew lexicon and tried to find similar characters on me to the lexicon or other manuscripts.
Wait, so he didn't try to translate you the way he did the Book of Mormon or even like the Book of Moses or the Book of Abraham?
No. The closest we have to that is a quote attributed to Joseph Smith, but is actually from William Clayton saying, President Joseph has translated a portion and says they contain the history of the person with whom they were found. And he was a descendant of Ham, through the loins of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and that he received his kingdom from the ruler of heaven and earth.
Well, where did he get that idea from?
Well, one of the symbols they forged on me was a boat-shaped symbol. It was in Joseph Smith. Am I pointing to it?
Yeah.
There's it. Okay. That symbol is present, and it's translated to Honor by beast, kingly power, by the line of Pharaoh, possession of the beast, by one who reigns upon his throne universally, possession of heaven and earth, and the blessings of the earth.
Wait, Kinderhook, that sounds a lot like William Clayton's journal.
Yeah, it seems that Joseph looked at a few of the characters he thought was similar to the Egyptian alphabet lexicon he had, and he made a guess.
Huh. Kinderhook, what happened after that? Was the book of Kinderhook published into a scripture? I mean, that would be pretty damning, you know.
So he made a guess. He was duped then, right? He saw a symbol that was presumably just a made-up etching on a piece of metal, and he drew some conclusions.
No.
No. Literally nothing happened. Joseph didn't try to translate me. He didn't make a Book of Mormon sequel out of me. He literally didn't mention me in any of his journals or to his friends. The only time he did was when he passingly requested for me to be sent to the Antiquarian Society of Philadelphia, France, and England.
So, to be clear, you were made to fraud Joseph and nothing happened.
Literally, I'm kind of honestly embarrassed about it. I mean, he didn't even care about me even slightly, like not even a little bit. He didn't pray to translate me. He looked at me once for like the symbol from his book, and then he ghosted me forever.
Okay, I'm sorry about that, but is there anything you want to say to your audience, or?
Well, I'm a fraud, but I'm glad to see that my great-grandson, the CES letter, is having a little more success than I did.
Right, that's the second one. So, some people tried to trick Joseph, and he fell into the trap, but only a little bit. All right, video 2, video 3 even.
You know what I don't get? How people act like the Seer stone part of the translation process is like the deal breaker, you know what I mean? It starts off with Moroni, an ancient Native American who dies and goes to heaven and comes back as a glowing angel. That's fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Literally, an Indian flying through time and space to get to Palmyra, New York is okay, but once you put a rock in a hat, oh, that's where it just gets crazy.
So, yeah, that's kind of a fair point. The mythological narratives within religions are crazy. The problem is obviously consistency within the deliverance of those mythological narratives. If you say the myth is this, but you admit a certain piece of that mythology, then by suddenly putting it in, that's going to trip people up. It's going to trip Mormons up, isn't it? You need to have a consistent narrative.
Let's talk about rocks.
The CES letter quotes respected, active Latter-day Saint scholar Richard Bushman, who said, "What in the world are the plates for? Why do we need them on the table if they're just wrapped up into a cloth?" when he looks into a seer stone.
Okay, my understanding was that the plates were not actually present when Joseph Smith was translating the Book of Mormon at all.
As many know, Joseph Smith used the Urim and Thummim to translate the Book of Mormon. Since Joseph was the prophet of the Restoration, he would be spiritually numbered among ancient people like the priests of the Old Testament who used the Urim and Thummim, aka magic rocks, to perform the will of God, or even Aaron, who used a magic stick. Joseph used seer stones that would tell him what was written on the golden plates. And this is how the Book of Mormon was translated.
So why did Richard Bushman act as if there was no need for the plates?
Well, he didn't. Jeremy Runnels and his subreddit Herd of Flying Monkeys are specifically not including a part of the interview where he talks about why the golden plates were necessary. They deliberately left this out to manipulate you.
Oh, you don't say.
I do say. Here's the quote. People say that the Book of Mormon certainly is an inspiring book, but the backstory of the plates in the translation is irrelevant to it. What would we gain and lose if we abandoned the plates? What we would lose would be a powerful form of the evidence that the Lord gave to Joseph Smith and to us of the actuality of these experiences, and therefore the actuality of the transcendence.
Evidence. If you show me the plates, then that's evidence.
Fear. That would be gutting some of the most gritty and appealing parts of the Mormon story.
In the CES letter, Runnels criticizes Joseph Smith for using a Ouija board to translate the Book of Mormon. The only problem is that the Ouija board wasn't created until 1894, and Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon in 1829.
Also, no, Joseph didn't use a Ouija board to translate the Book of Mormon. If you believe a bogus lie like that, you probably...
And they're even bleeping swearing. This is so weird. Even for faithful Mormons Why would this work for them?
Probably believe Jussie Smollett.
If you don't believe in God or Jesus, then you don't believe Joseph's claim. The Seer stone divinity is operating under the umbrella of God existing. The CES letter is atheistic, and examining the Seer stone under an umbrella in which there isn't a God is meaningless.
Yeah, the problem is consistency. That's the main issue. In Mormon literature and Mormon artwork, Joseph Smith is almost always shown with golden plates on the table, with him running his fingers across it, doing translation. That is not what happened. He had a hat, he had his seer stones in the hat, which were just common rocks, I believe. He looked in, and the words that the scribe took down appeared on the rocks. So, if that's part of the mythological narrative of the LDS Church, then there's no problem.
If you do believe in God and Jesus, then you've opened the door for angels, spirits, and all sorts of supernatural things. It's not as if this is technically weirder than those things. If you don't believe in anything supernatural or divine, then obviously you wouldn't believe that God could use objects for divine purposes. So essentially we're saying, who cares?
The CES letter is making a claim that nobody knew about seer stones until recently, and that the church didn't talk about it. For one, that's nonsense, because whenever we teach about Joseph Smith, we discuss the Urim and Thummim. In fact, if you Google the words Urim and Thummim, the first thing you see are magic Jewish rocks from the Old Testament. It's also plainly spoken about in Doctrine and Covenants section 17 and 10.
Okay, that's disingenuous. Again, you can obviously pull out sentences here and there. It's about overall consistency of a narrative as it's presented to everyday Mormons. That's it.
It's been referenced throughout church history numerous times.
Now, obviously, we don't spend Sunday school talking about the rocks of Joseph or the staff of Moses or the rod of Aaron. Jesus is more important. However, this lack of attention doesn't mean the church was maliciously withholding anything.
Now, the CES letter goes on for a long time about how Joseph Smith put the rock in a hat. The hat was to block out light, so essentially God was using the stones as a device to show letters, words, and or images. Sort of like an iPhone or a Samsung if you don't want her to text you back.
This begs the question, why did Joseph need the golden plates if the translation process was largely without plates at all? I think it's because the plates are a literal testimony of God. They contain the written testimonies of ancient prophets, and they themselves are a divine physical miracle.
Joseph had to guard them from robbers. Sometimes he even had to fight people. He had to keep the plates, a literal testimony, safe. I believe this is the Lord's way of training Joseph for what was to come. It was a physical representation of Joseph's dedication to God, of his willingness to fight for the testimony of the gospel, to fight for the church, and to defend even until the end. You know what's funny? People who are like, oh, use seer stones to translate. Half the country believes that Jesus walked on water and that a virgin gave birth. That a virgin gave birth. You believe that. You do. But Joseph can't use seer stones, all right? My gosh, half of you guys watched WWE and you believed it. Oh yeah, but seer stones, that's where you draw the line.
Okay, well, there you go. 3 episodes down. The word disingenuous comes to mind. It's all pretty cringeworthy stuff. But anyway, if you have enjoyed this video, please do give me a like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on future videos. And I promise we'll get onto some more interesting stuff. So thanks again, and until next time, cheers.
You say take me on a treasure hunt. I long for something new. Have you heard the fairies when they sing and dance? Oh, I wish it was me every night. When I close my eyes, I see